Pastor Cliff was here last week, and most of us were here last week. So if you missed him, we are putting, if you have technology on Facebook, we are putting all of the sermons every week. So if you happen to miss a week or you're out of town, you can go on the Facebook page and you can listen to the whole sermon and find out what you missed. And so if you missed Pastor Cliff, that would be a good way for you to get to hear him. And so what struck me is we kind of in the middle get a do-over. Usually, you know, when you're playing a game with little kids and they kind of mess up and you go, let's do a do-over. Has anybody ever had the do-over? What if, you know, we could do a lot of things like that. We could just do over. And right now, right here, we get a chance to do over First Wesleyan Church, just a restart, a do-over, so we can figure out what God's plan for us is and do it even better. And it's if we have that chance, we want to really make sure that we get it right. We got a do-over. Let's not take that lightly. Let's not just skip ahead and skip into what we're doing. Let's look at what we're doing closely so we can start from the beginning and get it the way we want. And so a few weeks ago, when I first started coming here and I was really trying to figure out what my purpose was and why God brought me here to First Wesleyan Church, I, for the last 10, 15 years, have been a student of what I would say is professional ministry. I love church, so I learned everything about church and the new ways that people were doing church in my generation. It is kind of a generational thing. We started hearing words 10 years ago or even more now, words like seeker, everybody hear that, seeker-based? I started hearing words like attractional church. These were all things that were coming to the forefront. I remember doing a Bible study in my home with my family, and we did Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Anybody remember Purpose-Driven Life? Yes, Brad, you remember. That's good. You were there. So Purpose-Driven Life. I remember we're in that study and we're getting excited and we're defining our purpose, and we're defining it as making more Christians. We're defining it as building God's church, and that's our purpose. And I remember it was actually my husband who was a newer to Christian Bible study at the time, and he actually said to me, he said, so like the church is like an ant farm, so you get them in and then you just get more people, and the people that are there don't matter anymore. And I was like, oh, that can't be right. That can't be what it's all about. So I started thinking through some of these things. We seem to be really focused in these bigger churches and these movements across the United States. We seem to really be focused on copying business models for church. Making church, the goal is getting as many people in the door as you can. And we started looking, I've been in conferences and been at universities and been in all kinds of so-called, with smart people. Most of them were smarter than me. And they used examples like Apple computers, the Apple company. We studied the Apple company in Christian classes because we wanted to learn what they were doing right. Because maybe our church, you walk into an Apple store and it's an experience and you feel welcome, and people are like, well, maybe our church needs to look like Apple. Maybe our church needs to look a little bit like Starbucks. Those places are going and they're strong and they're welcoming and people are going to them. So what if we made our churches this comforting, welcoming kind of place? And for the last years, that attractional, big business kind of church has kind of been what the church community has been leaning towards and leaning in towards. And at least it's what I was taught. It's what was taught to me. It's what was modeled to me. It's it's what's in my brain, what's in my head. So when I walk in a church, I can think of 100 things to do that we're going to get more people in here, from how we're greeting people to what our bulletin looks like to what our branding is to what our target market is. Those stuff is in my brain. It's like I went to school to learn all those things. But here's the result. Those churches that did those things, a lot of them succeeded greatly. We had a church like Willow Creek in Chicago, huge mega church, and they used these principles to get big. But the problem is what it did is it left congregations and people. There was people sitting there. Something was missing. They were devoid of the Spirit. It just wasn't there. It was what men did. Men created church. It was professional church that men created. And it's not all bad. I don't want to be like I'm ripping down all of that kind of things, because some good things did come out. But making unchurched people feel welcome, engaged, and entertained is not the way to live out Great Commission. It's just not. And we think it is, and we think it's a good way, and we want people to get here. So why is there this disconnect? Why is this happening? And I'm thinking about First Wesleyan Church, and I think you're thinking right now, that's not us. Lori's talking about stuff. We didn't make that mistake. We didn't buy into the relevant buzz and all those kind of things, and we're here. And so I do have a hard question. So what's better? A church that didn't carry out the Great Commission very well, was flawed, or a church that didn't make any progress at all? They're kind of the same. So we have a chance to go back and say, what's the problem with both of those models? What is the thing that we can build on? And what is the purpose of what we're doing right now? And so over the last couple weeks since I've been here and started working with Pastor Cliff and talking with him weekly and working on messages with him, it's becoming just so clear that all that professional church stuff that I learned, that's not why I'm here at all. Maybe I'm here because I learned that and now I know the difference, and maybe I'm going to be able to see the thing that's missing, and that's kind of what I'm getting more and more excited about as we're learning. And Cliff started us off last week when he was talking, and I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what he said because it was so important and so profound, to me anyway, and I just want to make sure that we got it. And I kind of meditated on this all last week. I re-listened to his sermon, and there's just some really good nuggets of truth in there, and so I don't want to miss it. We got our do-over, so we're going to do it right and not miss any of it. So Cliff pointed out that what these churches do and what our framework has been is the Great Commission is our number one priority. The Great Commission is our goal. The Great Commission is everything the church is about. It's our purpose for being here. The Great Commission is the mission and the vision, but he pointed out that Jesus gave us specific commandments and taught us specific things before we were commissioned. And so I want to take command versus commission. What's the difference? So if I'm in the Army and I have a commission and I'm commissioned over a group of people, I have authority. I have authority over you. A command is given someone in order to obey. So if you are going to be the person to carry out the commission, you're going to be the person that has the authority for that commission, you have to know what the commands are. You have to know what they are. You have to understand them. You have to be able to teach them to other people, and you have to be living them out in order for you to have the authority of the commission. And so Jesus, the unbelievable, amazing teacher that he is, was very specific, and he gave us all of these things. I mean, it's kind of funny to me. We try to think of ways to do church. Jesus told us how to do church. Why am I trying to even think of ways to do church? He told us. He comes right out and says it. He didn't keep those things secret from us. He tells us the right way to do it. So we need to know these commands that Jesus gives us before we live out the commission. If we skip to the end, things get missed. And Cliff said it best, and he said, our God is a God of order. And I was like, yes, he is a God of order. He does things very ordered. One word I would not use to describe God is random. God's not random. He's in order. He's specific. He's precise. And I was reading a devotion that was on the creation story. So you guys are going to help me out a little bit on the creation story. So how many days in the creation story? 7 days. So anybody remember what the first day, what we made? So on the first day, he created light and dark. It's day number 2. Anybody know? Water and sky. Day number 3, he created the land and the sea. Day number 4, the sun, the moon, the stars. Day number 5, he created birds and the fish. And on day number 6, he made humans, and he made all the animals, the mammals that live on the land. And then he rested on the 7th day. But the question I want to ask right there, if God did not do that in order, the correct order, if he skipped ahead and he made us first, we'd have no atmosphere to breathe. We'd have no food to eat. We'd have no land to walk on. All of those things were done in order because God he designs it that way. And he's so intentional in doing it that way. If he did it any other way, it wouldn't work, and we wouldn't be supported, and we wouldn't be able, our life would not be able to work out. So God is a God of order, and the order of things matters. It matters. So Cliff last week skipped ahead, and I'm going to skip ahead, and he gave 2 commands he talked about, and we're going to look at where those 2 commands are, and it's Matthew 22:34. And we're going to get out our Bibles because we're going to be in Matthew and John today, and I'm going to refer to a couple passages. So if you have a Bible there, get it out because there was too many words to put them on the screen, and I want you to be able to see, because one of the important things that you can see when you look at it in your Bible and when you look at it in the context is you can see the order that Jesus was doing things. There was a very directive order he was doing things in his last days because he was preparing. He was preparing people to be able to carry on without him. And so when we look at Matthew 22:34, that's where Cliff started to look at these commands that we were talking about. I marked these. All right. Matthew 22:34. So what's happening, what's going on here is Jesus, he's in Jerusalem. Remember the triumphant entry into Jerusalem. So he's in there, and while he's there the week before the crucifixion, he's doing all these things, and he's performing miracles, and he does the temple thing where he turns over the money changers. And right here, he is talking to a crowd of people, and the Sadducees and the Pharisees, the people that were in charge of the law, wanted to trip Jesus up. And they wanted, so they were thinking their best, what questions can we ask him that that's going to show him to be a fake or not know what he's talking about. So the Pharisees, and another word we can use for those is lawyers. They were like lawyers. They were trying to say, what are we doing here? And it says, hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees and Pharisees, he got together with an expert in the law to test him with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments. Love God, love people. Love your neighbor, not just the person sitting next to you or the person that you like or the person that's related to you. Love your neighbor as yourself. So that took place in the week preceding the crucifixion. And I'm going to take us a little bit forward in order. Just a few days past that, you're going to go to John 13. So you can flip to John 13 because I'm going to stay there for a while. So Cliff had us in Matthew, and I'm going to take us into John 13. And so the Matthew example was a crowd of people and lawyers and Pharisees and holders of the law that Jesus is talking to, and he's being questions about what is the greatest law, what is the greatest commandment that God has given, and he answers that question. A couple days later, Jesus is at the Last Supper. And when he's at the Last Supper, he starts out just with his 12 disciples. He's not talking to people, a big crowd of people, 500 people. He's not talking to the laws or people. He's talking to his 12 best friends that have been there every step of the way. And he knows what's coming. Jesus knows what's coming. He knows he's going to be gone, and he has to make sure that his friends understand what's going to happen. And they don't. They're kind of clueless. I mean, we have the thankfully we can see the whole picture, but they couldn't. So they're clueless, and Jesus keeps saying he's leaving, and they're just, what? Where are you going? And so Jesus has this he knows. He's down to hours. He's down to hours before the crucifixion with his 12 disciples, and he has to make sure they understand and they get it right because he knows he's going to be gone. He knows he's not going to be there. And so the first thing he does is, if you remember the story, washed the disciples' feet. And John 13, we'll start there. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So that reiterates what I just told you. He loved those 12 people. He knows the end is coming, and he has to make sure they understand what is going on here. So the first thing he does to help them, and Jesus always he loves all of us learners, the visual learners, the learners that learn audio. He always gives us examples. And so the first thing he does is he goes and he's going to wash all his disciples' feet, all 12. And this is a sign of love and affection. I mean, if you have ever done a foot washing, it is kind of an emotional experience. It's a bonding. I was blessed one time to my two older daughters. We were at this worship service, and I got to wash their feet as their mother and portray that. It's a powerful thing, even in our day and age. Just that act. There's something vulnerable about it. There's something pure. There's something true. And so this is what Jesus was going to do for this 12 people that he loved, and he's setting them up to understand how much he loves them. And so this room has the people he loves. And it also has, who else is in this room? Who else is one of the 12? Judas is in this room. Jesus knows that Jesus is going to betray him. And he loves him in the same exact way as he loved the other 11. Jesus knew Peter was there. He knew Peter was going to deny him and say, he didn't know that, Jesus. love that's not logical. It's different, and he's trying to convey this fact because he's leaving. All right. In 13 verse 12. Do you understand what I have done for you? This is what he's asking them after he finished washing everybody's feet. He said, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set this example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is the messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed and know them. And just to keep making this point clear that he's talking to this group of people that are going to be the body, the church. They're going to represent Christ when he's not here. He even says it, I am not referring to all of you, but I know who I have chosen. So he knows right at that point he's not referring to Judas, because Judas isn't going to be part of the body that represents him. I found it was kind of interesting because then he goes into the Last Supper, which we're not going to go through today. But after they pass the bread around, Judas leaves. He leaves, and I'm picturing that in my mind. Is he? Why he couldn't take it? He had to leave. He left. So there's not 12 of them there anymore. There's 11. And so what happens next is Jesus is giving directions and commands to 11 people that are going to be the body of Christ here on earth. And he says, my children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I will tell you now. Where I am, you cannot come with me. And remember, they don't really understand. They've been with Jesus night and day, continually. They ate together. They're best friends. They've done everything together. They don't understand. They're like, where are you going? You're not leaving us. Jesus says this, which is key. A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. A new command. Why did there have to be a new command? Why did we need a new command? What was going to be different? Jesus, when he was here with us, he represented to them the love. He was there. People were drawn. I picture it in my mind. People were just naturally drawn to Jesus. The crowds, 5,000 people. The woman who wanted to just touch him, they were just drawn to him. When Jesus is gone, what's going to draw the people if they don't have him physically right here? What's going to be the force, that irresistible force that draws people to Christ if he's not on the earth? But he is on the earth. He's here. We are his body. We are the irresistible force that attracts people to Christ. That's what we are. And we have to understand that. And Jesus wanted us to know that. A new command. This is a new thing. It's different. It's not the old. It's the new, because you are going to be the church. You are going to be my body. And probably they thought Jesus was a little crazy. Because I can't imagine what they were thinking, because they didn't know what he was. So when he gives this gift, this new command, I found it very interesting too that it's just those 11. It's just those 11 that he's giving the new command to. And when you follow through the timeline, Jesus gives this new command, There's the crucifixion. There's the resurrection. Jesus is here back with the people. He's there for a certain amount of days before the ascension. The Great Commission is given to these exact 11 people after the resurrection. It's not given to a mass of 5,000 people. It's given to the exact same 11 people that he gave his new command to. It was given to the body of Christ. It was given to us. And that's significant. That's significant for our purpose. It's significant for how we function. For how we function as the church. And what I've noticed is why I'm kind of dwelling on that, just these 11, just us, is over my experiences in church, it became like really uncomfortable to talk about just church people. Everything needed to be externally focused. Like if you're just talking about this body in here, you're being selfish. You're not looking outside. We don't need to be focused on what happens in here. We need to be focused on what happens out there and how we're affecting what's happened out there. But that's not the command. He didn't say go love all the people who aren't Christians. We should go love eventually because an outflowing of that. But he said love the people in this room first. He didn't say go love out there first. We had to get the command first before we could get that commission to love outside of the building, to love outside of the body. Had to get it right. So Jesus' love is not normal. It's extraordinary. It's supernatural. It defies logic. It's irresistible. I like to imagine what it'll be like just to stand in the same room or near him, and how that's going to feel, and how we couldn't look anywhere else. It's him. We're just drawn to that. There was an example in the news this week, and some of you may have seen it. It was all over Facebook, and it was all over the news. And it's a story of this man named, his name is Botham, and he was shot by a white police officer, and that was a terrible thing, and political things, people are arguing back and forth on that. But the point that I saw in that, so Botham's brother forgave the cop that shot his brother. He forgave, and not only that, he wanted to embrace and love this person and show them, which is not normal. That's not a normal reaction. And people are blowing it all up. Look what this kid did. It was not a normal reaction. People are just drawn to it, and they want to see that. And why did this happen? And we're like, Christians are putting it everywhere. Look, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to forgive. The point of the story that was so pivotal to me is when you saw the reaction of the woman who was given the forgiveness. He said, can I hug her? In the courtroom with all these people. And he says, can I hug her and give her a hug? And that lady, she didn't hesitate. She didn't be like, what's going on? You're like, I don't know, this guy. She physically ran into that guy's arms. And she did not want to let go. That's the kind of love that draws people. That's the kind of love that people run to. That's the way Jesus loved. That's the kind of love we have to show each other so that people are drawn. That kind of irresistible love. And that was a personal example of one person, but we can put us, the church, in that place. Put us in that place. My timer is. Alright, so what do we do then? How do we go forward? What do we concentrate? What's our plan? I was thinking, that irresistible love of Jesus, and it made me think of, the feeding of the 5,000. There was no strategic 5-year plan for that. There was no committee that got together and said, we're going to have this big thing where 5,000 people are going to come and Jesus is going to talk. They didn't even plan to feed the people. But Jesus was so irresistible, they all came. They all came. They wanted to be there, and the food got taken care of. We didn't have to worry about that. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. If we're here and we're not loving each other well, and we're being easily offended by each other, or we let jealousy creep in, or we're complaining about things that are happening within these walls, or if we're prideful, people aren't going to come running here. That's not irresistible. We want to have the irresistible love of Jesus, and if we have that, none of the rest matters. We have to be good stewards, but we need to start there. If we don't start there, we have nothing else. We have no foundation. Like we sang earlier in worship, we have to have the foundation. And that is the foundation. Everything else, the commission, is an outflowing of that. It's a new command. A new command he gave us. He gave it to the 11. And then he gave the 11th commission. And I'm going to take us to Matthew, because we're winding up here. So worship team, they have one more song, so they can start coming up as I finish winding us down here. And I'm going to read what that Great Commission actually says for us, so we can see clearly the difference. This is what Jesus says after he is resurrected, after he comes back, and he's in the same group with the 11 people. And he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end. We can't teach people how to obey the commands and fulfill the Great Commission if we don't understand and live out the commands ourselves. It's clear. He makes no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's the way that we do things. It's the place that we start. And how do we do that? How do we love each other better in here? We take time. We notice each other. We connect to each other outside of these walls. We are blessed with a group of young people, young adults and students here. Do you know how powerful it is when someone that is not their relative takes an interest in them? You feed into your grandkids and your nieces and nephews, and that means something, it's important. But when you do it for some child that's not related to you, that's not normal. That's extraordinary. That's irresistible. The same is true for our young people and their grandparents and all of us older people. If you have that relationship in here, it means something. It really does. So we need to start there. Let's love our students and young people. Let's do it really well. If we start somewhere with love, I promise the rest of it, we can't go wrong. If we do that, we're not going to make a mistake. If we start right where love, creating that irresistible love between all of us here, that's the directions. That's the plan. And the rest will come. We'll learn it, and the rest will come. And people will irresistibly attracted to this place, to this body. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I will tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot go. Jesus' physical presence is us now, the body. A new command I give to you. Love one another as I have loved you, so that you must love one another. He's talking to his body, his 11 disciples. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. It's where we start.